Who might have been taking Ryan to see his dad in prison? What has changed with Tommy Lee Royce? What new problems has Catherine faced this season in Happy Valley? Keep watching to find out. Welcome to Square Eyes, a channel where we recap, review and take a sideways look at your favourite TV shows. This video will be taking a look at the first episode of Season 3 of Happy Valley. I'll recap what happened in the episode, pick out my favourite line, review the episode and give you my thoughts on all the major storylines. Let's jump straight in. The new season starts with Seargeant Catherine Cawood investigating a skeleton that has been found in a nearby reservoir by the water company. When the crime scene investigators turn up to check over the remains, they aren't impressed by Catherine's suggestions about how long she thinks the body has been in the water, and don't pay much attention to her observations. The implication is that uniformed officers shouldn't overreach, and she should stick to just securing the scene and leave everything else up to the experts. They are quickly made to look silly when she goes on to tell them the exact identity of the skeleton, and why he might be in the reservoir in the first place. Gary Gagovsky upset the wrong gangsters around 8 years earlier, and hasn't been seen again. She knew that he had been rumoured to be thrown in a reservoir at the time, but his body had never been found. I love this cold open as it quickly reminds us that Catherine is a no-nonsense police officer that doesn't have any respect for authority. She knows her job really well, and we get a bit of her sense of humour too, as she tells the story of Gary Gagovsky and his dodgy shoulder that he got from falling from a flat block while he was high on MCAT. Rather than just telling us what Catherine is like, we get shown it in this little glimpse of her in action, and we also get thrown straight into the story, as this body from long ago is going to be relevant to the story later on. After the credits we see Tommy Lee Royce, who is still in prison but looks very different from the last time we saw him in the second season. Rather than a shaven head, he now has long flowing hair and a big beard. Most notably, he also has some nasty looking scars on his forehead. Tommy Lee Royce is arrested for the murder of Gary Gagovsky and taken in for questioning. From the questions he's asked by the detectives, it sounds like Tommy has told both a fellow inmate and the prison chaplain that he was responsible for the murder, or at least knows who did. A key piece of evidence is the St. Christopher that was found in the concrete that was used to weigh down the body, that exactly matches the description of a St. Christopher Royce had 16 years earlier, when he was in prison for an earlier offence. The police are particularly excited about Tommy Lee Royce being involved in the Gagovsky murder, as they may be able to match the ballistics on the gun used in that murder to one used to murder Ashley Cowgill, one of the characters in Season 1 of Happy Valley, who the police suspect was murdered by Darius Knezevich. The police are optimistic that Tommy Lee Royce will be willing to turn on Darius Knezevich, because they believe that there was an assassination attempt on Royce that was organised by Knezevich, because the two are no longer on good terms. Royce's lawyer reads out a prepared statement about the murder, but rather than pinning it on Knezevich, he says the gunman was someone called Chris Oxley, who apparently runs a rival gang in Oldham. There's a playfulness to the way Tommy is dealing with this whole situation that suggests he's playing a game, but it's not clear what he's doing. Something seems different about him compared to Season 1 and 2. He used a nastiness before, but now there's a more playful and silly nature to the menace that he carries. He still seems completely evil, but rather than being driven by rage, he now seems to be having fun. It'll be interesting to see more of this new version of Tommy Lee Royce, if he really has changed. The story then jumps forward 6 months and we're watching Ryan, Catherine's grandson, and Tommy Lee Royce's son, playing in goals for his school football team, while his grandma, Aunt Claire and her boyfriend Neil watch on. Despite Ryan being a lot older than the last time we saw him in Season 2, he's still getting in trouble with his teachers. His PE teacher, Mr. Hepworth, calls him a horrible name when Ryan lets in a goal because he was too busy complaining about the rest of the team. We then see a family birthday party for Ryan's 16th birthday, where we find out that Catherine has bought herself an old beaten-up Land Rover that she intends to do up and drive to the Himalayas in her retirement, which is now only a few weeks away, because nothing dramatic ever happens to police officers when they're a few weeks away from retirement. At Ryan's suggestion, his friend shouts something silly at Mr. Hepworth as they're leaving school, and he gets the teacher into a rage that makes him chase them, for a very short time, in his car. He soon finds a new target for his anger when a mother of some other children at his children's school calls him to say that she's picked up his kids, because his wife hadn't done, possibly because she'd been drinking. Rob Hepworth then goes home and confronts his wife Jo, and we find out she's been addicted to prescription painkillers in the past and he suspects her of taking them again. She denies it, but it's clear she's high on something. A deeply uncomfortable scene follows where he ransacks the bedroom to find the pills that she's been taking. When he eventually finds them, he is aggressive with Jo in a way that suggests he abuses his wife in the worst possible ways, but he does stop short on this occasion. Instead, he decides to call the police to report her for having the painkillers without a prescription. While he's calling the police, we see the fridge, which has a padlock on it, and there's a key safe so high that only he could reach it. Clearly he's controlling the people in the household and is an abuser. It's Catherine that responds to the call to investigate Rob and Jo's situation, and straight away she sees the bruises on Jo's arm and the padlock on the fridge and understands the situation is not healthy between the husband and wife. Catherine arrests Joe, but more so she can take Joe out of the house and away from her abusive husband, in the hope that this will prompt Joe to talk to her and what is going on at home and hopefully encourage her to leave. It doesn't play out like that though, and Joe doesn't talk at all about her domestic situation and won't say anything about where she got hold of her diazepam. The next morning, a few houses up the hill from the Hepworths, Faisal Bhatti, the local pharmacist, looks very concerned when his daughters say they saw a police car outside their neighbour's house the night before. It prompts him to climb through the gardens and sneak into Joe's house to find out what happened. From their conversation, it seems likely that Joe has been sleeping with a neighbour in exchange for free painkillers. Faisal is potentially in trouble too, as the pills the police confiscated from Joe were still in their blister packaging, which means they could be traced back to Faisal's pharmacy. Joe lied to him about this though and said that she'd taken them out of the packet, so he doesn't know how much trouble he's in yet. We follow Faisal to work, where we see him given a large quantity of unprescribed medication to a scruffy-looking man that seems to also receive a prescribed methadone treatment too. The scruffy man suggests they could expand their operation more because there's such a lot of demand, but Faisal refuses and says they need to keep things as they are. He's clearly very stressed and nervous about his dodgy dealings. Next, Catherine is called into Inspector Mike Taylor's office to be given news of a rumour that he's heard on the grapevine. Apparently Ryan has been visiting Tommy Lee Royce in prison. Catherine can't believe this at first, but it becomes more plausible when she finds out that Royce is now in Sheffield prison rather than Gravesend, so it's a much shorter journey for Ryan to make. The rumour was that he'd been visiting with a man and a woman. Taylor agrees to email the prison warden to find more information on the visits and tries to reassure Catherine, but it's clear that she's deeply worried about this news. Then we go to Tommy Lee Royce's prison cell and the camera is zoomed in on a recent picture of Ryan, as if to confirm that he has definitely been in contact with his son. Tommy is working his way through a conversational Spanish course. This has to be significant, but it's not yet clear why. Catherine goes for a coffee with her ex-husband, Richard, to talk about who could be taking Ryan to visit his dad. She runs through the possible suspects, including him, but none of them make any sense. Unable to solve that mystery, the pair talk about their love lives. Richard's partner Roz is sleeping in the spare room. On a more positive note, Catherine is being courted by Nevison Gallagher, whose daughter Anne was kidnapped in Season 1 and is now a police officer and in a relationship with Catherine's son Daniel. Richard is very dismissive of Nevison, saying that he's too old for her, but this may be because he still has feelings for Catherine too, particularly as his relationship with Roz seems to be on the rocks. Back at Faisal's pharmacy, his day gets worse when he's visited by some local gangsters who found out about his illegal medication sideline and don't like him selling drugs in the postcodes that they own. Rather than telling him to stop, they want him to carry on, but to pay them £1,800 a week. Faisal tries to protest about this, but it's clear that these are serious guys who you don't get to negotiate with. The two goons that threaten Faisal are driven away by a man we've not seen before, but who looks like he might be a significant later, possibly someone higher up the food chain. The episode ends on a cliffhanger where Mike Taylor tells Catherine he's got information about the prison visits between Tommy Lee Royce and Ryan, and she's not going to like it, and we're left not knowing what that news is. My favourite line in this episode, or at least the one that doesn't have any swearing in it, came from Catherine's ex-husband Richard, when he said, "Tell me, Catherine, what verse attracted you to the millionaire Nevison Gallagher?" This paraphrases a famous interview question that the character Mrs. Merton, played by Caroline Aherne, asked Debbie McGee about her husband Paul Daniels, the implication being that money was the only reason that she could be attracted to him. I think the line is quite funny on its own, but it comes in the middle of a discussion about who might be taking Ryan to prison to see his dad, and also a discussion about the romantic lives of Catherine and Richard, so the humour helps to ease some of the tension in the scene. This was an excellent return episode of Happy Valley. It gave us an update on where the existing characters are, introduced some new faces, set up the storylines for the series, and included more funny dialogue than the series has had in the past. I think there's more room for laughs in this episode because the drama is yet to take off as the different elements of the story are still being set up, so you get to see a bit more of Catherine and Claire having a laugh with each other, which is always enjoyable to watch. Of course, this episode wasn't all fun and games. Mr. Hepworth seemed bad as Ryan's nasty PE teacher, but he was an absolute monster when you get to see his home life. While most of us are familiar with the concept of coercive control, it's still alarming to see it played out on the screen. Rob Hepworth didn't seem to have any redeeming qualities whatsoever, and if I was going to guess which character was most likely to meet a grisly end, my money would be on him. He just seems so horrible that he can't possibly survive until the end of the season intact, and, if I'm honest, it might be quite enjoyable to watch his downfall. Faisal and Joe seem to be more sympathetic characters, even if both of them are in the eyes of the law committing more serious crimes than Rob. Jo just seems desperate to escape the awfulness of her situation through painkillers and will do whatever she can to get hold of them. And Faisal's decided to try and make a bit of extra money doing something a bit dodgy and got in way over his head. The fact that Ryan's been visiting his dad in prison opens up a fascinating storyline for this season, particularly as there are two people that have been helping him to do it. It seems likely that it's going to be two people that we already know, with the cliffhanger ending suggesting Catherine isn't going to be happy when she finds out who's been taking him. I love how good a villain Tommy Lee Royce is. Even from inside prison he has the ability to cause chaos. Now he has an ongoing relationship with Ryan, he can do even more damage. I would be interested to know if he has genuine interest in Ryan as his son, or whether he's using Ryan as an instrument to get back at Catherine, as he has been fixated on getting revenge on her in the past. It's possible that both are motivating factors for him. Though the fact that he was teaching himself Spanish while looking at his picture of Ryan suggests he may have plans to get out of prison somehow and go to Spain. Given he's serving consecutive life sentences and is up for another murder charge, it seems unlikely he's going to be able to get out of there, but he has a swagger about him that suggests he's got a trick up his sleeve and we just don't know about it at the moment. Catherine jokes about the yoga session down at the Nick created so much flatulence that it melted a polar ice cap and caused a flood down at Hebden Bridge. While this is obviously a joke, Hebden Bridge has had more than its fair share of floods over the years, with it being at the bottom of a valley. A particularly bad flood in 2015 put the whole town under about 6 feet of water, and many homes and businesses never fully recovered from the damage. The reason Sally Wainwright, the writer and creator of Happy Valley, left such a long gap between season 2 and 3 was because she wanted Ryan to grow up and come back when he was old enough to be able to make his own decisions. Now he's nearly an adult, he's able to play a bigger part in the story. The story of coercive control in the Hepworth household is oddly similar to a famous case I remember from my childhood. A school teacher in Huddersfield, not far from where Happy Valley is set, was abusive to her husband and sons, including padlocking the fridge. The abuse became so bad that the father ended up talking his adolescent boys into murdering their mother to save them from her tyranny. The 15-year-old boy killed his mother with a hammer, and the 14-year-old brother helped get rid of the murder weapon and set up the house to look like a break-in had taken place and a burglar had killed her. Obviously it all came out in the end, and they all got into trouble with the police, including the father who was out playing darts at the time of the murder, but was clearly the brains behind the operation. I wonder if Rob Hepworth might be in for a similar fate. His little girls seem a bit too young and innocent for that, but I wouldn't put it past a show like Happy Valley. Staying with the Hepworth household, the padlock on the fridge was pretty scary to see, but it wasn't until I watched the episode back that I noticed the family meal plan on the fridge. When Catherine asked Rob about this, he says it's a bit of fun, but even without seeing the details, having every single thing you're going to eat for the whole week noted down on a spreadsheet seems like the opposite of fun, particularly when it's been set by a nasty controlling person like Rob Hepworth. I zoomed in on the picture to see if I could see what the meal plan actually was, but the text was too blurry. Looking at the state of Joe and the children, I'm guessing they weren't being fed well though. I was a bit surprised when Faisal said that the illegal drug dealing was only bringing in about £1,000 a week. It doesn't seem worth the risks he's taking for that kind of money, given that he could lose everything if he's caught, which is now looking really likely. He's probably earning nearly as much from his legitimate earnings, so in some respects he'd be better off just working loads of overtime or getting a second job in another pharmacy working nights, and not having to worry about the gangsters breathing down his neck. Looking ahead to the next episode, the huge question we want answering is who has been taking Ryan to see his dad in prison. There haven't been any significant clues for us to go on that I've noticed, so I'm not going to speculate here, but I'm looking forward to finding out. It has to be someone familiar to the story already, and it's going to make Catherine angry, so probably someone she knows well. Another question I like answering is why is Ryan seeing his dad in prison? Does he really think he's changed? Or has he actually changed? There does seem to be something different about Tommy Lee Royce's demeanour now, even if he does still come across as a psycho. I hope we find out a little bit more about what's going on inside Ryan's head. Then we've got the new characters and their situations to find out more about. Ryan's already got on the wrong side of Mr. Hepworth at school, while Catherine has seen the darker side of the PE teacher in his home life and the abuse his wife has suffered at his hands. Though Joe seems more concerned about keeping a steady flow of painkillers coming through from Faisal up the road, who in turn now has to start shifting more dodgy deals out of his pharmacy so he can pay off the local gangsters. Also, we've got the Land Rover parked outside Catherine's house as a big metal reminder that she's not got long left in uniform and will soon become a civilian. We also know that it's the last season of Happy Valley 2, so the long happy retirement she's dreaming of is far from guaranteed if the writing team decide a dramatic death will be more entertaining. I hope you've enjoyed this recap and review of Happy Valley Season 3 Episode 1. I'll be putting up a video for Episode 2 in a few days' time, so please subscribe to make sure you don't miss it. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.